I think people have got to start taking more of an ownership of their health, and they've got to start thinking about what they're putting into their body.
And that actually changed my entire way of living.
Yeah.
And now I'm proud to say that I'm wearing the same suit I did when I was 18 years old.
Yeah, we are born pretty healthy and well, and we slowly pickle ourselves from the inside out with sugar that we are taking in.
Hello and welcome to our podcast, The Aesthetic Edge. Now today, guys, I'm super excited. It's a really interesting subject, longevity. Now longevity is one of the best industries to be in today. Some would argue that longevity is aesthetics 15 years ago. So a wonderful industry to be a part of and to learn about. Today I have a really good guest joining us, Dr. Matt Pyrell. Dr. Matt is a consultant plastic surgeon by background, but he has opened up Apex Medical, which is a sister company of Derma Medical, where we teach doctors and dentists the recent innovations of the longevity triad and how we can improve patients' lives through prevention rather than cure. Fascinating topics to be discussed today. Dr. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Dr. Rosh. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you've been on multiple episodes in the past, but I think this is a subject that's truly close to both of our hearts. So Matt, why don't you start off by telling us how you got into the longevity industry?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I was a plastic surgeon, or I still am a plastic surgeon by trade. And I did 2 aesthetic fellowships. So one out in East Grinstead and one here in the London clinic. And I was seeing quite a lot of private plastic surgery patients, aesthetic patients coming in, facelifts, tummy tucks, liposuction, all these sort of side of things. I couldn't help but think there must be a better way. We were doing liposuction on a patient every 3 months. They were coming back for more and more liposuction. And every time you get more scarring, more contour deformities to the body, and I started asking my question, am I doing the right thing here? Like, is there something better that we can be doing? So I started thinking about an alternative approach to these patients. So I started thinking how we're just so ingrained in this sort of reactive nature of healthcare. It's what we're taught at medical school, Absolutely. It's what we're taught during our training, it's how to sort of fix things once it's already broken. So it took about 5-6 years ago, it took me just sort of really sort of take stock and say, I need to try and work out a more preventative way, a more sort of proactive way. So I started researching into things like preventative medicine and that side of things. And there are things out there, but it's more about general population screening and sort of various things like that. You do try and pick up disease early. It wasn't really preventing disease. It was more just diagnosing it early and treating it early so it didn't get too bad, which is great in its own right. But it wasn't quite enough for what I wanted. And then I started reaching a bit further and I saw lifestyle medicine. So that was the other big one we have here in the UK. Obviously in the global scene, sort of lifestyle medicine isn't necessarily as big. It's something that we've really done here in the UK. And I was like, great, this is what I quite like. And I originally branded our clinic as a sort of lifestyle medicine. Hence what it's called One Life. It was all about lifestyle and that side of things. And we started doing that, and we had personal trainers, nutritionists, and we did a lot about diet and lifestyle. And then I was like, this just isn't quite enough. Like, I want more than just diet and lifestyle. Like, I'm a doctor at the end of the day. I can prescribe medications, I can do things to optimize health. And what can we do more than diet and lifestyle that can actually still have that preventative, proactive approach in healthcare? And this is, a few years ago, the word and term longevity medicine was becoming more popular. It's becoming more mainstream even now. And I heard this term and I was put onto it, and I sort of thought, this is exactly what we want to do. This is improving someone's health span. So it's all about focusing on increasing the healthy number of years you have in someone's life. And it's not what I thought originally, which was just trying to make someone live forever. So these are 2 very different things. They're 2 different aspects of longevity. Yes, you will see people out there who are saying that I'm going to live forever, and they're doing longevity practices.
Do not
for
die.
These. Don't die. Exactly right. There are people doing that, and I think that's great. That's fine. There's pioneers out there trying to pave the way forward there, but actually what I want to do is much more mainstream, something that anyone can do. Absolutely. And something that these are the changes both on diet and lifestyle, but also through medications, supplements, nootropics, other things that you can do to help try and reduce the risk of disease as you get older. And we have a saying at One Life, we have a saying at Apex, and we talk about living healthier for longer. And these are 3 principles I talk about quite a lot. And I talk about obviously being healthy, longer is great, but don't forget the living part of it. So these are all things that have to be able to be implemented in by the client that you're seeing.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And actually, I completely agree with you that medicine is very reactive. I feel like in med school, it was 1 day on nutrition.
Yeah.
And think about it, everything that you're putting into your body day after day, surely that's going to have an impact on how you feel long term. With medicine, it's very much disease, drug, disease, drug, disease,
Yeah.
surgery, disease, drug. Whereas I think what we're both trying to do nowadays is trying to help it from the source.
Yep.
If we improve someone's nutrition, if we improve someone's sleep, if we improve someone's exercise, then all of those diseases further down the line will never come to pass,
Yeah.
which is exactly why this industry is growing so quickly, especially in aesthetics. Because I'm not sure if you found this, Matt, but my clientele usually is my aesthetic patients who I've been seeing for years. And usually, when you look good, you also want to feel good.
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of your patients have come through aesthetics?
I do. There was a British Association of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeon a survey actually sent out to aesthetic patients and cosmetic patients, and it found that 95% of those who wanted to look good on the outside also wanted to feel good on the inside. So there's a direct correlation between the two. And I think it's really important what you say, because we are sort of wanting to do this for our patients. We have an interest in proactively getting them healthier, so that if they increase their health, that when you start declining and falling off the edge towards your end of your life, you have a higher starting point. So you're actually going to be lasting longer in those sort of health years without needing more assistance. But I think there's a lot of skepticism around longevity medicine. I think people are sort of rolling their eyeballs going, oh, it's not evidence-based, it's not this, it's not that, and the other. And I really want to just take a point to talk about evidence-based medicine. So I don't know if you remember at med school, we get taught about what evidence-based medicine is. And it's the principle of a patient coming into your clinic, asking you a question, and then you spending that time to go away researching the evidence around that question and coming back to them with a laid out structured answer, and then talk about how you can actually take these principles and how they can incorporate it into life, maybe a diet, lifestyle, medication, or whatever it is. And I was like, this is great. I mean, I'm going to be able to do this. Every patient I see, I'm going to be able to go away and I'm going to be able to research all of these things and I come back to this. Now, that was 15, 20 years ago when I was at med school. And how many patients have I actually managed to do with that, particularly in the NHS, where I've actually been able to go away and research it?
Don't have the time.
The amount of literature that's out there is mind-boggling.
And they all contradict each other too.
They do. The research is hard. So not only is it just about reading or summarising papers, it's actually about trying to use a critical mind to analyse those papers and work out, is it good? Is it good research? Is there real strong evidence behind this? How much noise is out there around it? So actually what we are doing in longevity medicine is practicing this evidence-based medicine, because we've actually gone out with research all of these interventions that actually make a difference. For example, a big paper that was published in the Lancet article in August last year showed the risk factors for dementia. And this is a huge population study. And you can actually you can infer in there things that you can do to actually reduce the risk of getting dementia as you get older. And these are tangible things that you can incorporate into your life, evidence-based. So there's so many things out there that is evidence-based, and the thing is, it's not regulated. And so it's really sort of up to you to really go out and find that information. And that's really what Apex Medical has done, is taking all that information, consolidating it out into easy qualifications, or qualifications that are easy to understand, implement into people's practice.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest troubles that doctors have is finding good research material that's evidence-based. Now, you said one of the things is population studies, in terms of how large the population being studied is. Are there any other markers that you would look at to establish whether this study that you're looking at is actually good quality or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very good structured analysis of papers that we actually recommend. We talk about on our website. We talk about how we analyse papers, because you've got to start from the beginning. You've got to start looking at the author. Okay, you've got to start by who is this person? What is the centre that they've been doing research in? Is it a one-man band sort of somewhere in Outer Mongolia who's doing this research, and the actual infer, or the things from that population might not be necessarily applicable to the general population or your population that you're working in. So you've got to look at that. You've got to look at the person. You've got to look at the location. You've got to look at the name, the previous research they might have done, and you've got to see if there's any bias. Now, this is a really big thing. It's author affiliations. Now, most of them are declared, but there's a lot of people out there who claim to be promoting these independent, impartial advice, and then you find out 6 months later, they have their fingers in this pie or that pie or this supplement company. And
incentives.
Exactly. And that's what we've always been key to do at Apex Medical, is be clear that we are only selling education. We never sell any supplements, we're not selling any certain tests or anything like that.
No affiliation.
It's no affiliations whatsoever, and we're key, because we are just going through the process. We've got CPD UK accreditation, but we're next month just about to be accredited for the Academy of Continuing Medical Education in America. So that's going to be a really great thing to us. But for us to do that, we had to have no links with what they call an ineligible company. An ineligible company is a company that's actually trying to sell products, trying to convince people that they have medical benefit. because that's where the lies become really great, and there's a lot of noise out there.
There is.
And there's a lot of supplement companies saying this works really well. There's a lot of aging test providers saying this works really well, and they all put out their own evidence and they all contradict each other. And then you sort of like say, well, where you sort of left with your head scratching in the middle. And I think when I set up Apex Medical, that was where I was really clear to sort of say, well, this is the actual evidence. This is the evidence. These are the papers. Go away and read them yourselves, because everyone will have their own mind about what level of evidence they're happy to accept to start incorporating something in their practice. For example, we're getting a lot of gerotherapeutics coming out now. So these are medications that are actually designed to target the aging process. Now, these are going through various levels of studies. Now, none of them are quite evidence-based enough for the FDA to approve them, but they require a very stringent level of checks. There is still a lot of evidence coming out about them actually having really good effects on the aging process itself. And it's quite easy to sometimes get lost in the science of this.
It's a minefield.
But actually, it's really, really important to look at the clinical applications, look at the clinical studies. What effect has it actually had on a person and the disease? And then you look at that research and you can say, right, okay, well, this actually does seem to be working. I'm happy to incorporate it in my practice. But that decision's got to be on a personal level. Until you get someone, the FDA or someone saying, right, this is an FDA-approved medication, then it's got to be a personal level about what you want to do as a clinician. It's got to be that evidence-based medicine. You've got to go back, you've got to look at the evidence, which is why every time we put a podcast out there, or if we do any sort of blog or anything like that, we always reference where we're coming from. And the same with all of our teaching materials. It's all very referenced, so people can actually go there, do the research if they want to. But it's ultimately evidence-based approach where you take all of that's out there and you start condensing it into these clinical protocols.
I think that's one of the most wonderful things about Apex Medical. Now, I myself, as you know, Matt, went to an Apex course. I did the foundation, the advanced, the e-learning was fantastic. And I also did the in-person learning where we would have consultations with patients. One of my favorite things about Apex is that they consolidated everything into a nice, easy, understandable way. Because when you're entering an industry, looking at all of these studies, it can be really confusing. So allowing us to learn the basics of everything, and also allowing us to be able to distinguish between good quality studies and bad quality studies, allows us to go out there, build on the base, on the foundation knowledge that you've given us, and expand it. Now, one of the really good things I like about Apex is that you split it up into, I believe it's called the Apex Triangle. We talk about multiple different things that you can improve from the base up to improve how our patients feel, how their patients look, all of that. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Apex Triangle?
Yeah, I love talking about the Apex Triangle or the Apex Pyramid or whatever. We've changed the name so much at the moment. We are trying to settle on something that really encompasses it. So, answers on a postcard. It would be interesting to sort of see what your listeners and your viewers think as well, because I'll talk through what the principles are. Essentially, there are 5 main steps that we can classify almost every longevity intervention in. And I think that is where a lot of people get quite lost, is that people who are starting out in longevity medicine, they put in longevity medicine and this whole host of things come up. I was presenting in Dubai last week and I put up a slide and I managed to find almost every term of what was related to longevity. Every intervention, every test, every diet, every lifestyle intervention, all these things that you can do, and I put it all on the slide, and there wasn't a lot of white space left, let me tell you that. And actually what is really nice that we've done with the Apex Pyramid is to structure all of that noise into 5 very clear steps. And that gives people a framework to build on. And it was really interesting. We were at this lovely event last week, weren't we? And I had people coming up to us and talking about the longevity that they are doing. And a lot of them were sort of doing things sort of down here, just doing lifestyle, and they were doing things up here with some cellular aging, NAD+. And they were connecting in the middle, exactly. So let's talk about the 5 steps then. So the 5 steps is the original lifestyle medicine. So that is how I originally sort of learned. It was a lifestyle medicine approach. So it's all those sort of 6 main pillars of lifestyle medicine. We talk about them. We have our own mnemonic called the Think Fast mnemonic. So we talk about food-free window and the food intake that you have. We talk about activity, we talk about sleep, substance misuse, and then thoughtfulness or mindfulness at the end. And that's our sort of lifestyle mnemonic. And they're all things that you can target with your patient. Again, so evidence-based interventions that can help reduce the risk of aging. So that's step 1. Step 2 is then hormones. Because once you've optimized diet and lifestyle, hormones are the next things to really look at, because they take such a large part of your body. If you have someone with a low testosterone or going through the menopause, then you're not going to be able to optimize their performance and everything else without having dealt with those hormones first. That's why it's in step 2. Once you optimize hormones, then we can start thinking about weight and metabolic profile. And that's when you're looking at not just a BMI, because we know BMI is just a very sort of rough measure of someone's well-being, but actually looking at their metabolic markers, looking at their different cholesterol levels or triglyceride levels. I know we've had other conversations about cholesterol and the controversies around that, but we're really getting an idea about the metabolic profile. And we talk about metabolic profile on the scale from being a healthy individual all the way up to being a full-blown insulin-dependent diabetic. And now we, as a species, I guess, have classified this into healthy metabolic syndrome, non-insulin-dependent diabetes, and insulin-dependent diabetes. That's just us putting a label on it. But actually, I'm on the firm belief that it's very much a continuous scale.
Spectrum.
That we start off being born, very, very sensitive to insulin. The more sugar we get, the more insulin spikes that we have, the more we become more resistant to it. And those who are getting lots and lots of insulin spikes, they're right up at this end, they're becoming insulin resistant. And those who aren't having many insulin spikes, they're staying down the other end, and they aren't getting things like, or they're reducing the risk of things like dementia, cancer, and everything else because they're down this scale. So I really think that metabolic scale has a real good predictive value for longevity as well, and that's why it's firmly in our sort of step 3. And again, to say why it's in step 3, if you haven't optimised your thyroid hormones, there's no point going into weight measures, because you need to obviously prioritise those first. Step 4 is all about performance optimization. Now, you probably heard the term biohacking. Some people love it, some people hate it. It is essentially what we're doing. We're doing a medical biohacking, we call it. So you're looking at things that you can actually change to improve mental and physical performance in somebody. And these normally come in the way of supplements. So again, supplements can be a bit of a minefield, as we know. But there are a lot of evidence-based supplements out there. Yeah, exactly, a lot of snake oil. But if you look at things like creatine, one of the most evidence-based supplements that we have, obviously caffeine's a big supplement. There's a lot of supplements out there that we can use that has quite a lot of evidence behind it. Indeed, there was a paper this month, it released February 2025, and there was released looking into omega-3 and how many diseases it can reduce the risk of as you get older. And that's been a big sort of mainstay of what we teach and what we use for our patients. And that goes into physical performance and mental performance optimization, which is step 4. And step 5 is all about cellular aging. Now, this is where, in other countries, and some people, when they think about longevity, this is what they think about. These are your hyperbaric oxygen, ozone therapy, your follistatin gene therapy, all of these things that they sort of come into your higher level of cellular aging. So really coming into that, people who are spending the big bucks, who really want to sort of go down that route of almost trying to extend life and push a little bit into the beyond. Now, that is really fascinating. It's a lot less evidence-based than the other 4 steps. The other 4 steps have got a lot of more rooting in evidence. As I said earlier, there are gerotherapeutics, as mean medications that can be used to target cellular aging. And once these come out, it's going to be a lot more evidence-based, and the evidence is building. But I've always been on the principle that you can't really jump in these things. If you pour NAD+ into someone who isn't doing all the other things, you're just not going to see the same benefit.
This is exactly what I was going to say. I was going to bring you back because I think you very aptly named it the aesthetic pyramid, because at the bottom base is what supports everything else. If your lifestyle is not made to be the best it can possibly be, then no matter how many hormone supplements you give, no matter how many weight loss therapeutics you give, you're not going to get a difference. Now, in my private practice, what I find is Ozempic is the buzzword. A lot of patients coming in because they're here, I can have Ozempic, it's a magic drug which will make me skinny. And it's ridiculous, because actually, if you're not doing the lifestyle stuff, if you're not eating the right diet, you're not going to get any of the results by having this drug medication. Do you find this in your practice as well?
Yeah, absolutely right. And what is really good about having the longevity pyramid is that you can guide people on that discussion. So we have that printed out in a clinic, we have it online, we have it available for clients to see. And when they come in and say, oh, I've heard some amazing things about Ozempic and I want to come and have a weight loss injection, well, we can say, great, absolutely fine. We're not going to say no to you, but what we need to do is we need to fully assess you. And then we need to think about whether or not you're suitable for this at this time. Okay. So then we say, look, this is the pyramid we're looking at. These are the 5 steps to longevity. So you're coming in, you're asking for things on step 3. Now, we could do that, but you would be wasting money because you're not going to be seeing the long-term beneficial effects from taking the other 2 steps first. So how do you know you're not weight gain isn't because of menopause, for example, or because of andropause? How do you know it's not because of various other things that we can optimize, like thyroid dysfunction? So I take them back. So if someone's coming to my clinic, first off, unless they have done everything else, unless they are, they're eating well already, they're doing what you've got to analyze it, and you've got to take off the other things. So we get a full diet and lifestyle analysis, and we look at them and we say, right, what things can we achieve? And we don't go in there recommending certain diets or anything like that. We go in there with principles that they need to adhere to. So these main principles are things like having low sugar spikes, so reducing the number of sugars you take in, not having processed foods, and have more about fresh. And we were talking earlier about the amount of things you can consume in your body, and the list of ingredients that people just don't read that they put into their body. It's just crazy.
I always say, if you read an ingredients list and you don't recognise 90%, probably doesn't belong in your body.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's enough ingredients to have 90% of them as well. I think you're looking for things that have got sort of 5 ingredients, 5 maybe 7 or 8 ingredients if they're all sort of natural things you say you'd recognise in your own kitchen. But people have got to start taking more of an ownership of their health, and they've got to start thinking about what they're putting into their body. But get sidetracked a little bit. I want to come back to talking about what we do with the weight loss patient, and that weight loss patient is going to get a full diet and lifestyle assessment. They're going to get continuous glucose meter. I want to see their diet meal plan. I want to see how everything links together, how their body reacts to it. Maybe even do a gut microbiome analysis to see how they're processing the food internally. Then I'll do a hormone analysis, and every patient needs a hormone analysis because they need to know weight can be associated with thyroid levels, testosterone levels, estrogen levels can all be associated. So I say to them, well, you're coming in asking for this, but why don't we check to see if it's actually a cause for your weight gain at the moment, and we can optimize that. And I normally get by with doing that, giving them some things to change, going away and reading some material about, because weight loss medications are new. There's still not a lot of evidence about them, and we're talking earlier about certain diets and not being a lot of evidence about them yet. But these medications do show some very good promise, and we just got to really educate them that they aren't completely without their own risks. The long-term gastroparesis is becoming a real issue, and people are more aware of this. And
do you think that's more of an issue because people are getting Ozempic by themselves and they're not having it under the guidance of a doctor or prescriber?
Because I think if you're doing the diet and lifestyle changes, then you're less likely to get these side effects because you're not overeating, you're not stressing your stomach when it can't respond to it. So it's all about slotting them in. So when you've got a patient coming in for that, just like if you've got a patient coming in who wants NAD treatment and wants to have the cellular aging protocols, if they've not done anything else, I'm like, so can we take you on a journey? We might take 6 months to get there, but let me do this properly so that we can get to the point where you're not just doing this for a quick crash diet, you're losing some weight and then you're going off and putting it back on again. We'd much rather do a long term, and that's why we work on membership plans. So that's where in longevity medicine, a majority of longevity medicine clinics have some sort of membership. So that is going to be a long-term, ongoing support, ongoing education for their clients, because it's like a gym membership. You can't stop living and wanting to do a healthy lifestyle. It's not something you can just do for a short period of time. That's what a diet is. That's what a crash diet is and a fad diet is. But actually, lifestyle changes that you want to make need to be supported, because people are a lot more likely to succeed with them when they're in a group and they're surrounded by people who are doing the same sort of thing. And that's an interesting point in itself. I've had people come across in our course, like you're one of these as well, who come on the courses, they learn these principles, and then they've gone away and lost weight.
This is that's funny you say that, because that's literally the next thing that I was going to bring up, because I feel like one of the most important things as someone who's going into this field is that you got to practice what you preach. So when I first started exploring the area of longevity for personal reasons, my mum is rather unwell, so I was thinking, what can I do to try and make her feel better that she can do every single day without giving her a single drug? And that's what got me into longevity. I started practicing what I preached as well. And when I learned more about it, I incorporated these few lifestyle skills like low carb, low sugar, high protein, and I actually changed my entire way of living. And now I'm proud to say that I'm wearing the same suit I did when I was 18 years old.
Congrats.
I've lost the weight, I feel better, I feel clearer. And that's exactly what I want to do for my patients as well. I want to pass this knowledge over to them so they can do little things every single day. Now, I know you've mentioned a lot of things like doing microbiome testing, all of that. I don't think we need to go that far into detail for most of our patients. I think just doing the lifestyle and diet consultation for them to relearn everything and to really understand the importance of it often takes up the entirety of our first consultation. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I think for the first consultation is setting expectations and it's finding out what drives them. So I set out a lot of my consultation to find out what is motivating them and what have been their previous challenges in the past, because I want to make sure they succeed this time. So you've got to know where they've been and where they come from. We talk a lot about diet and lifestyle, and because that is naturally the foundation of those 5 steps, we need to focus on that. And the majority, and you don't want to overload anyone. So the majority of information you give to them has to be really focused around that diet and lifestyle. There are things you can do. So your continuous glucose meters, I find being a really useful tool, because it just gets people to buy into it. Gut microbiome is a trending thing amongst people who are interested in health and longevity at the moment, because there's more and more research coming out about how it can affect the mood, how it can affect your inflammatory status, and how you process food. So it's really an interesting topic. So some of the clients actually come in, they ask for this, and they're interested in this. So actually having it can be another way just to get them to sort of buy in, get them to realise that we are tailor making this treatment plan for them. Now I similar to you was I was a great success story of longevity diets. Now I was 17 stone when I was at university. So I was probably the opposite. I couldn't fit into my suit when I'm 18, but my suit was much larger back then. But I didn't eat very healthy until I was sort of left university and done a few years as a junior doctor. And then gradually started
Which makes everyone
increasing
this way,
it.
being a junior doctor.
Oh, exactly, yeah, exactly. But I started increasing into it, and for me, the journey took 10 years. For you, it's been much quicker because you've had that 2 years of the knowledge that I've done. You've put it all into to one course, and you've learned that. Now, what do we? I've done over 10 years. I had to gradually things. I was doing the 5-2 diet, then I did the 16-8, and then did sort of more less low carb sort of approach to diet. Did all these sort of things, and they kind of worked, but I still didn't feel right, and I still felt like I was craving sweets and craving chocolates and things like that. And it was actually only when I really sort of went quite hard on my own rules, and I really cut down the carbs and really only sort of saved it for one carbohydrate window a day, that I started losing those cravings. My gut microbiome changed, and actually now I'm quite content.
Another thing I think that's absolutely changed my life is prioritizing my sleep.
Yeah.
Since I prioritize my sleep, I have more energy, my muscle recovery is a lot better, my cognition is better, and there's a lot of reasons for that. What are some of your tips to improve your quality of sleep that our listeners can do today to see the difference?
So absolutely, the first thing is prioritize it. Lack of sleep and you're completely falling apart. There's so much research out there to say, if you don't get enough sleep, you are going to essentially die much earlier in a much worse way, being much more ill as well. I think the key principles are actually, if you start prioritizing sleep, there are lots of things that you can do to do it, and things like having bright light exposure in the morning. Okay, one of the best things you can do is get up in the morning. It's quite hard when you live in England in the winter, but get up in the morning and get bright light in you. Okay, so that if that involves getting a bright light lamp or something like a sunlight lamp, also very, very helpful. Just a way to get in bright light, because that sets your hormones, it sets your diurnal rhythm. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing is to restrict the blue light in the evenings, because a lot of us are victims of doom scrolling on social media. One of the biggest thing our clients tell us when we're consulting with them is that they struggle to sleep. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing? What are your nighttime routines? Like, okay, well, do my bed, get into bed, do my teeth, have a shower, whatever, get into bed, and then I sit there and I'm on Instagram for 3 hours just scrolling. Yep. And I'm like, okay, so there's a problem here. You not only have you got sort of potential blue light coming in from the phone, but you've also got mental stimulation, and all these things that we're just saying about how it's designed to stimulate your dopamine system, is starting to get you aware of it. They actually are going to be addicted to that, and therefore they're going to not be able to switch off and rest. So it's all about changing that nighttime routine. Now, as kids, you've got a child yourself, haven't you? As kids, we know about getting into those routines and the importance of getting into routines for sleep. We do our teeth, we have our bath, we have our story time, and we get into bed. If we can set those routines as adults, we sleep much better. Now, everyone sort of says, I slept like a baby and sort of thing like that. It's because babies have these amazing routines and they can sleep for 12 hours solid. So it's getting into that routine, into a healthy routine. It might involve leaving your phone downstairs and buying an alarm clock, which is something I recommend to a lot of my clients.
Yes.
But things like trying to reduce that blue light in the evenings, or reduce that mental stimulation as well. The other big thing is caffeine. So I have clients, particularly from sort of our parents' generation, who would just have a cup of tea, not even that, a double espresso, at 10 p.m. after they've finished dinner, and the next thing they're actually going to do is go brush their teeth and go to bed. Is they have a double espresso, and they say, oh no, but I fall asleep absolutely fine. And it's like, okay, when do you wake up? Oh, about 3 and 5, and and it's okay. Well, it's the quantity and the quality of sleep
The
you're
quality
getting.
that most people forget. They'll say, I go to bed every day at 9:30 and I wake up at 7 a.m. It's very regular. But actually, what's the quality of that sleep?
Exactly.
One thing that I would always recommend is wearing a wearable of some sort. We won't use any brands here, but there's multiple out there. And actually, it's a great way of actually seeing how well you're sleeping. And I used to see the little differences as well. So when I would have a glass of wine with my dinner at 6 p.m., the quality of my sleep would go down dramatically. And one of the wearables I wear will tell me the REM, it will tell me the deep sleep, it'll tell me my restoration, it'll tell me my heart rate variability. It's fascinating stuff. Occasionally, some people might find it a little bit addictive, and some people might say they might feel like they've had a really good night's sleep, but their score is low, and then they might even feel psychologically, I should feel terrible. Regardless, I think it's a great tool to be able to actually track your sleep, because you don't know if you're having a bad quality sleep. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, and that's your baseline. It's only when you take a step to improve it that you think, wow, how did I survive beforehand?
I completely agree with you, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, because those are the two main limitations of doing sleep tracking. Is that one, you get into your own head about it and you end up having worse sleep because you're worried about not having any sleep. And the other one is you feel, for some reason, you had a good night's sleep, you feel rested, and you wake up, you check your sleep score and it's been awful, and then suddenly you sort of crash because mentally. And so I think those are the two limitations, but I think with those in mind, you can definitely use it to a benefit, and you can start seeing the changes. Now, just like continuous glucose meters, I use them intermittently. So I recommend to clients that they do their current test, they find out what their good sleep score is now. Then we start implementing some changes, and then potentially in 3 or 6 months we do another glucose meter and another sleep assessment 2-week window. And for those 2 weeks, then we're finding that data, and then you've done some real changes, and you can usually see quite a big improvement in the score, rather than sort of getting obsessed about little things that as you sort of change gradually. So I find that is quite a nice way of doing it without having to then get those negative connotations of checking things or getting too obsessed with it. So those are a really good way of doing it. Again, depends on the clients. Some people just want to be tracked all the time and they have everything, and we now use software where we link with it. So our clinic now links with the wearables so that we see things in real time. So when clients come to the next appointment, we can see all that historic data. We can summarize it, we can find out trends, we can look at patterns. Especially with AI now, we can actually use so much of that data to generate a really personalized report for them. So it's really good to get that when you're doing it. We just say do it for 2 weeks and we just analyze that for the most people. But I say some people just love having their wearables and they like seeing it, and that they love seeing those little parts, those little improvements, which works really well. But yeah, I think sleep is really important, and I think we are waking up, excuse the pun, of how important it actually is. And the people are starting to prioritize it, and there you've got big names who are talking about prioritizing it now. It's going to be a bit of a game changer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know about you, how you feel, but I just feel like we've stumbled on something here. And I feel like we've discovered the sort of the next way of living. Like I feel like we've worked it out. We're doing it. We're living it.
And we're seeing the difference ourselves.
We're seeing the difference ourselves. And people out there are watching this thinking, I can never cut out sugar. I can never prioritize sleep. I don't need chance to sleep. I've got young kids. I've got this and the other. We're sitting here. We've got young kids, young children. We've got busy jobs.
You have 2 under 4.
Exactly. We are living it because we are doing it. We've made those changes. And suddenly, if you can sleep so much better, everything else falls into place.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's worth talking about a couple of supplements to try and help with sleep as well. And I think it's, whenever you're doing supplements, it's something you've got to take into mind. But again, just to add some value to your listeners and your watchers, I think it's good to have some supplements you can think of when you're thinking about sleep deficiencies. So magnesium is one of the big ones. So magnesium bisglycinate is the most evidence-based for sleep. And if you take that, sort of usually the dosing varies depending on sort of the person, but usually that's sort of 500 milligrams, and they take it just before you go to bed. So maybe an hour or so before bed, after you finish your evening meal. And that is a really good way of just filling up your magnesium levels, because we are all almost certainly magnesium deficient. Now, the issue with magnesium is you can't test it easily because blood levels of magnesium are homeostatic, so they are normal. They will be normal. But it will be taking magnesium out of your cell stores. And there's the magnesium that's actually affecting things like cellular function and ability to sleep. And that's really hard. You can do intracellular tests and levels of magnesium, which we do as a specialised test for people. Sometimes it's very expensive, but you can do it. But these are a really good option, but you can generally accept that most people are going to be magnesium deficient. We just don't have enough magnesium in diet anymore. So it's just not present in the soil enough to get into the plants and then to get into the animals and then sort of get to us. So it doesn't go through the food chain.
And it has a whole host of benefits, even with things like cramping. The problem is nowadays you go to the average GP and you say, I struggle with sleep, straight away Zopiclone. But there's so many things in between. You have your magnesium, you have your melatonin. There's so many other things that you can do that. But me personally, I think the most important thing is to do all the things we said before. And just to recap it, because I think it'd be very useful for our listeners, it's things like bright light exposure in the middle of the day or to start the day. It's things like reducing your blue light filters. I found interesting about wearing red glasses. So red glasses, as soon as it's sunset, really helps reduce the blue light exposure, because we're not only exposed to the blue light on our phones. It's the blue light and the lights around. So if you can light candles, you can wear red glasses.
An important point, it must be wrapped around. So your glasses are going to wrap around exactly, because the blue light can get in front of you. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to sit there with your glasses on, you've got to make sure they're the right glasses. But absolutely, they do work, and they reduce that blue light.
Red light filters on your phone as well. That actually really helps. There's like
almost
shortcuts you can
every
do.
smartphone, laptop, everything now will have like some sort of sleep mode or reduced sort of colours like red light.
One more tip that I wanted to give our listeners that I found really helped me in my practice as well is actually having your last meal around 6 p.m. Not after that, and also trying to focus on a more protein heavy rather than sugar or carbs. As we know, sugar and carbs are stimulants and they can cause our brain to race, and then going to bed on that can be quite difficult. But the other reason that you want to have your last meal around 6 p.m. is that in order for us to fall asleep, our heart rate needs to drop. And if we've just eaten a large meal at 9 p.m. and we go straight to bed at 9:30, then our heart is working really hard to send all of the blood to the digestive system, which is then trying to digest our food. Therefore, it doesn't allow our heart rate to drop low enough to actually fall asleep. So hopefully, guys, that's a few tips that will really help you. Guys, if this is useful for you, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Share this with someone you know who's struggling to sleep or struggling with a diet, and hopefully we can help them out. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Matt, it's been a pleasure as always. We always get lost in our conversations. And guys, if you would like to have Matt back on the podcast, please do let us know. We'd love to have him back. Again, I hope this has been super valuable for me. I've learned a lot. Longevity is a very exciting industry to be a part of. And if you have any questions about Apex Medical, please do feel free to contact Matt directly. Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time.